Hi, I'm Bob Kэssidi, and I'm really happy to announce a new download I did with nice folks here at Penguin. In it, I deal with a lot of billet techniques that many people have heard of but haven't seen. It's one thing to read about these things in books. I know when I started out, I had read all about Anneman's billet switches, center tears and stuff. I never actually saw someone do one. So what I've done in this special download for Penguin is to demonstrate for you some of the basic billet techniques that all mentalists should be familiar with, and many of which are very useful to magicians as well. I also show a version that Al Mann and I came up with of an instant access tear, which you might find a lot easier than many of the other wonderful instant access center tears that are on the market today. Basically, this download is a miniature course in billet work for you. And billet work is the most direct, my favorite form of mentalism actually, because all it requires is a few slips of paper, a pencil, and your mind. I know you'll find something in it that you'll enjoy very much, and so will your audience. Good luck and good thoughts. Okay, hi, I'm Bob Kэssidi, and today I'm going to talk to you about billets and other interesting things in mentalism. One of the most common questions I get when I'm doing my lectures throughout the country to mentalism groups and to magic groups involve billet work. There's a lot published on it. Very few people actually do it. Those familiar with my act know that it is a core of my act. My name, place routine, and my fourth dimensional telepathy routine are both billet routines. I've always been very much attracted to billet work because it's pure. All you need is paper and a pencil to do it. In fact, the billets I use, though, aren't paper. Well, some of them are. I'll get into that in detail. The standard billet that I use, and the word billet, by the way, actually comes from the French, from the term billet le doux, which meant a little letter. That's where we get the word billet from. Billet readings were originally done by spirit mediums, not by mentalists, and they called them billet readings. Sometimes people will ask, well, do you ever refer to these as billets to a lay audience? No, I don't, but it's not because it's a mentalism technical term. It's not. Spiritualists know what a billet is. Classically, you would write a message to the spirit you wanted to contact on a small piece of paper and burn it. This would be how the message was transmitted. And vice versa, there would be billet readings where you would write something and it would be collected, and that was the beginnings of the original question answering act, where the medium, without looking at the question, would channel an answer to it. So the billets I use, though, nowadays, are made from simple index cards, cut in half. This gives me the ideal size. This was not the classical method, or the classical fold, which I'll also show you. Simply folding one in half gives me my guide for cutting them. And that's what I do. I'll just make a whole stack of these off the one, and I always have a pile of these in my right trouser pocket. Any billet that you're going to switch into a routine to take the place of the one the person has written on is referred to as a dummy. A dummy billet is typically a blank billet. The ones I'm using here are folded simply into quarters. It's important in most of my work that it be folded fairly well, because I don't like them to spring open prematurely. And also, when you're using billets in conjunction with envelopes, they fall out of the envelope a lot easier if it's been folded properly. I always keep a dummy in the left-hand trouser pocket and the stack of billets in the right-hand trouser pocket. The reason the stack is in the right-hand pocket is later in the routine, or in any billet routine. Here, I should point this out. I generally put a very basic fold into the whole stack that goes in my right pocket. And the reason for that is they're slightly pre-folded, and they also, if I open out a stolen billet against the face of this pack in my pocket, it's not going to be the only one that's noticeably bent, if that makes sense. These would go in my right pocket. All right, assume a person, and we have extras from the show last night. Assume a person has written on this one. There are any number of ways that I can do a switch. Here's our dummy again. I usually have it in the left pocket when I'm doing the lighter switch, as I do in my name place routine, but I'm going to show you some standard finger switches first. The basic switch, billet is held like this. Notice between the first finger and the middle finger along the side. This is a variation of a switch called El Dorado in the book Mainly Mental by C.L. Bourdet, although he did it with an Anneman-style fold, which I'll show you in a minute. But the switch should look like you're just creasing the billet. Here's what happens behind the scenes. Well, I'll show it to you in front of the scenes first. You're going to come across, this one's palmed here, you're going to come across like that and crease it. That's the switch. I'll show it to you again. What's happening is this one is getting released from here as this one comes here. Now, as the crease like that. From the front, it looks like this. Looks like you're just creasing the billet. That's the switch. Your standard Anneman switch, which I'll show you in a second, again, this is just like that. Before we get to the Anneman, I'll show you the Baker switch. The Baker switch, your dummy is here. It's placed over the corner of the one in your hand like this. This I call the simplified Baker switch. In gesturing and talking to the audience, you simply transfer the billets to the other hand. That's it. You're just turning the whole thing over from end to end. That's just a very casual switch that you do. There's nothing fancy about that. And it's very disarming, actually. Another one I use occasionally, which I find fun, I call it the Moldavian switch. The Moldavian switch, the dummy is palmed this way, between the first two fingers. The billet that you're going to switch out is held upward in this hand. This hand comes down, it looks like you just picked it up. In fact, you switched it. What's happening is this, from the side, this hand comes down to pick it up, it pushes that one into view. So you have both here. Why do I call it the Moldavian switch? I don't know. I just do. Because it was in one of my Dr. Bob books, and Dr. Bob is allegedly from Moldavia, where he is the billet king. The standard Anneman billet was slightly different. And some people still use these. I'll tell you why I don't, though. Standard Anneman billet was this way. It was done with paper, not with index card stock. You fold into quarters, but it has an additional fold. So the billet is rectangular, like that, rather than square and larger. You're having two like that, and this is the way the Bourdet switch I showed you before was originally performed. This piece would be here, this billet. So when you came across to do the switch, again, it looks like you're just creasing it. But it's the same move we were doing before. It just goes like that. Your standard Anneman switch that you'll see in Practical Mental Effects, and as he described in Jinx, was based on actually an old medium move. Your dummy is palmed along the length of your middle finger like this, grasped between the first joint of the middle finger and the base of the finger, like so. This hand comes across, and it just slides them like that. That's all it is. The move, you can't do it with your hand standing still, or people are going to see something. It's done while you're gesturing and apparently creasing it. He had a variation of this, and that is if you do it and open the billet at the same time, it can be very deceptive if you're going one ahead in a question answering routine. In other words, I want to switch one billet for another as I'm answering questions from a bowl. That's your basic Anneman switch. There are any number of ways you could go with switches. A good switch, though, should be simply casual. One I like to explain to beginners, particularly magicians, is based on an old coin vanish. It was developed by Martin Schipender. I learned it from Henry Hayes' Amateur Magician's Handbook. It was called the Schipender Vanish. Pretend this is a half dollar. The Schipender Vanish looked like this, and you would vanish the coin. Of course, as a mentalist, you don't do that. It's really here. Here's the move. As this hand apparently puts it into this hand, the third finger and middle finger bring the coin back into the palm. So it appears extended like this, but as you go like that, it's that finger pointing over that really gives the illusion that you put it in this hand. Now that works very well as a billet switch. Dummy here. Here's the one they wrote on. You're just going over to that hand. and you've got your switch. That's a very casual one that I like. Obviously, a lot of guys do shuttle work. If you do a lot of coin magic, you'll find the billets may come a lot more naturally to you. Shuttle passes are perfect with billets because you can just go from hand to hand like that. And they work fine. The key to billet work is never look at your hands when you're doing them. Be talking when you do them. And as I've explained elsewhere, be moving around when you do them. There is no rule that you have to stand stock still with a camera focused on your hands and have that kind of perfection. Misdirection is a lost art, and it's an important thing to remember. If you say something, as a mentalist, there's a different psychology going on that I should touch on. When you go to see a magician work, an audience will tend to look at his hands if he is doing something with cards or coins or something like that. That is not true with a mentalist. If I speak to someone in the audience, they will do what most people do. They'll look at my eyes. That's the perfect time to do a switch. Ask somebody a question. Like, what was your birthday? That's when the switch is done. They will look up. That's a slight advantage that mentalists have that magicians don't always have, because people know better than to, they don't want the magician to misdirect them. They just don't expect it when it comes from a mentalist. Lately, one of the things that's gotten very popular are variations of the instant access center tear. Person has written a word on the paper. Here's what it looks like from an audience's point of view. I'm going to get the peek at that word as I'm tearing the paper. They've written their word. They've handed me the billet. They've initialed it on both sides before they did the writing. That's to assure that I don't switch it or whatever. Here's what it looks like, the tear. I'm just coming across like this, tearing again. I've got the word, and that's what it looks like from the audience's point of view. I think you'll agree that looks extremely clean, like I just tore up the paper. Now a behind-the-scenes view. The way you fold the paper is critically important. You fold first from left to right, but not all the way. Don't make the fold perfectly even. Don't go up to the other edge. Drop it about 1/4 of an inch from the edge. So in other words, you have a little tab like there, okay? Now fold away to go into quarters. The writing is going to go into the lower right quadrant of the billet, right here. What I do generally is draw a line and put an X. Note that the line is halfway, it's right at the center of that quadrant. That's important because the first tear later is going to go this way. It's going to tear off everything below the line. All right, how do I get them to write down there? Well, I write their name at the top as we're going along, and I maybe put their birthday over here. Then I have them focus on a word and say just concentrate on the X, see your word by the line. And again, I also have them initial the outside of the billet before they write. That way, I've assured that they're going to fold it back the right way, because later when I tell them to fold it again, fold it so your initials are on the outside so we can see them. Person writes their word. Okay. They've refolded it. Now here are the moves. You just saw it from the audience point of view, and I'm sure you didn't see anything, because there's nothing to see from the front. But from the back, here's what I see. The first tear is going to go this way. I want to tear slightly less than half. I don't want to go straight down the middle. I want to go slightly off center to the right. And that's because I don't want to rip through the word. There it is, under the top layer of paper. And again, that's why it's important that you use this type of paper, pulp paper or newsprint. It's opaque. You can't see. Even though I've written ink on this one, you can't see the word through it. All right, the first tear goes like this. Okay? The folded corner, the double folded corner is down here. There's the first tear. You now are going to put this piece you just tore off directly on top of the rest of the packet. But you're going to take your first finger and push back. In other words, you're going to, if you were to pull this piece away, you'd see the word. And that's what you're going to do in the next tear. This goes on the top, you pinch that. And now you tear away. You just tear away the front part, and look, there you see the word. From the front, it looks like you just tore it again. In fact, you just tore off the front. So from the performer's point of view, he's seeing that. These pieces now go directly on top of that. As you turn them clockwise to give it yet another tear, and toss them aside. That to me is the easiest instant access chair there is. but it is critical as to paper. A lot of the other variations aren't quite so critical when it comes to the type of paper you're using, and we're fine with business cards and with index card style billets like I've used. But I think this one is very practical. These pads are also excellent for a move that was kind of popularized in Corinda's 13 Steps to Mentalism, but that very few people do because it seems to be so hard, and that's Al-Quran's one-handed center tear. Now, the one-handed center tear has some quirky uses, and you could think of your own. There are a few of them in Corinda. But the one-handed center tear, well, it's kind of interesting. What you do is you draw a movie screen across the center of a full page now, a full piece. So this is your movie screen. I would typically have somebody concentrate on the name of a movie or whatever. Then they were to write the movie inside the screen. It's like they're seeing the title here. We'll use Gone with the Wind. Okay. This one, the billet is folded this way, and it's folded once again. Now, it is important, I'll go over this fold again, and it's important here to have them initial it because they're going to have to, they have to fold it up the right way, okay? Here's what the tear looks like. It's very cool. You have to move your hands a little while you're doing it, but it's done with one hand. They fold it, there's your Gone with the Wind. They hand it to you. The initials stay in full view. One nice way of doing it is to take a bulldog clip in the left hand and put the paper into the clip. Now try not to go out of camera range here. But you see as I go over to this hand, the tear is done. I've stolen the center out. So it's a one-handed center tear. It is over here. It's a one-handed center tear where you don't apparently tear anything. Now you can't see the full length of the billet because I've torn this piece of it off. That's the entire center. That's where the bulldog clip idea comes in, because you can kind of fold it over and pinch it in there, and they see their initials the whole time. This hand can now drop to the pocket or behind a pad or whatever. Open this out for secret reading later, and there it is, the whole movie screen. I'll explain this one more time. The reason a lot of people have trouble with it is that if you do it exactly as described in Corinda, it's not going to work. The paper is going to bunch up in your hand. It's going to get wrinkled and not tear. Here's the secret. He suggested that Al-Quran did it with adding machine tape, and he got the idea from watching women in old offices breaking tape this way with their fingers, one-handed. Because you're actually going to break this. Let me show you how it works. If you have a copy of 13 Steps to Mentalism, look up the Al-Quran one-handed center tear. Gone the Wind. I left out the with. Well, you get the idea. Gone with the Wind. Okay. Folded this way, and this way. But here's the little thing that makes this so easy. As I'm creasing it and talking to them, remember, it's right here is where the center is. The part that's where the name of the movie is. As I'm creasing it, I put a tiny little tear right there. Just a tiny little tear as I'm creasing it and talking to them, okay? They initial. Let's make it an X. Okay. You'll notice if I were to open this up, there are little tiny tears in the paper, but they don't see them because they're pretty much covered by the movie screen line. And even if they do notice the little tiny tears, nobody ever thinks anything of it. But there are little tiny tears there. So now, when this is handed back to me, I get the torn part to the bottom. So these are at the top. And here's what happens. The middle and third finger clip just below the tear. Now what's going to happen is the middle and third finger are going to curl into my palm as the forefinger and thumb go forward. This tears the billet, like that. See what I did? I just had it in that position, went like that. It just pops it right off. Because it's pulp paper, it doesn't even make a noise. But now I have to cover it. This is not as long as it's supposed to be. So as this goes into the other hand, I make sure to cover. Now that is subtle. You've torn out the center, but not apparently torn the billet at all. This is here. What some people do, and here's an interesting thing, it's mentioned in Corinda. Before they start, they'll take a small piece of paper, the exact same size as this torn piece is going to be. right? And give it to someone to hold on to. Now they do this. Okay. After they've stolen this out, put it in this hand or put it in a bulldog clip, they ask for the paper that the other person was holding. And in taking it, switch it for this one and hand it to somebody else to hold on to. And they think they're holding your prediction. Okay? Now you would take this and very carefully, so you don't expose what's going on, you open it up and misread. Gone with the Wind, they open up the prediction. It's Gone with the Wind. They don't realize that the other guy reading it is looking at the first person's writing. That's a principle I like a lot. But there are a lot of places you can go with this. Just play with it in your mind if the move fascinates you. It did fascinate me, and the thing I like about it is it's a center tear where nothing is apparently torn. And that's the Alcoran version of the one-handed center tear. Thank you. Now there are many who shy away from any type of a switch that requires digital dexterity of any kind, even though I hope I've gotten across to you that it's your own movements and presentation that really disguises most of it. But for those of you who want a virtually fail-safe way of doing switches, the best one I know of is using a thumb tip. Here I'm using a standard plastic Brené thumb tip. The classic Baker had two switches. I explained before the regular Baker switch without the tip. His thumb tip switch was done like this. The dummy curled slightly so it fits inside. Be, of course, mounted on the thumb. The billet that the person wrote on goes on. This is Al Baker's original handling, which I don't do. And there's a lot of reasons I don't do it, but I want to show it to you for the sake of completeness. This hand comes in, puts the thumb on top of the dummy. The fingers close around as the one inside gets pulled out. It's terrible. But by turning from left to right as you're doing the move, it is concealable, and I'm sure that Al Baker had no problem getting away with it. The problem I have with it is that it looks wrong. You would not take a billet by putting your thumb, and I don't like the fact that the thing is out in plain view. Baker used an old-style thumb tip, which was a small metal tip that you rarely see them anymore, but original thumb tips are only about half the size of a Brené, and they were made of aluminum or tin, painted flesh color, and they were used primarily for vanishing a cigarette butt in a handkerchief. That's why they were made of metal. He used much smaller billets, too. Using the Baker thumb tip switch, though, with the larger thumb tips, it becomes very awkward. So rule number one that I always apply to thumb tip work is I don't wear them on my thumb, ever. I wear them on my middle finger. Why? The hand is much more natural. The position is much more natural. This is held back. I can, if I want, go straight forward to an audience to gesture, and you're going to see it from the front, so it's not going to be obvious. But I don't make any, as a mentalist, I very rarely bother showing my hands empty or anything else. The switch also makes more sense, because instead of putting your thumb on top and pulling, here's the dummy. As you turn toward yourself, the middle finger is going to go out on top of it like that. I'm just going to open it like that. So here it is. It's on the hand. Middle finger goes on top and pulls this one out as I'm opening the one that was inside. You see, the original is now here underneath. That's the Al Baker thumb tip switch. Now, it leaves you in a position that obviously has to make sense in the particular routine you're doing. Here we have this. Again, this just goes on top as the hands, and there's your switch. You can either crease it or open it at this point. That also works nice for a bill switch, if you want to switch into a serial number revelation or something similar. Another ideal use of the thumb tip on the middle finger is this. Jack London used to have a series of routines based on this idea that works much better on the middle finger. And that's where, say, you have many bills borrowed, folded up, placed into envelopes. You make a prediction or whatever. But you want to switch that. Well, the easiest switch in the world is using the thumb tip with the duplicate bill or force billet that you want. You can have different things written on all the papers. You want to force one of them. And this looks perfect. One of the envelopes is handed to you. It's a random selection. You open it. If you haven't sealed the envelope, it's very easy. Or you just tear the end off, blow it open. Now it's simply a matter of shoving the middle finger down into the envelope, which makes a lot more sense. You'll see a lot of old routines where you're working on your thumb where they go in like that. That looks wrong. But going like this looks perfectly fine because they see it come out. This is now crumpled up and goes in the pocket, and there's your switch. So in apparently removing, of course you could do this to apparently remove something from an envelope that was actually empty to begin with. But the key is it's wearing it on the middle finger is the point I'm emphasizing. It makes all of this just so much more natural. And I think you'll be able to find a lot of use for that, more so than you would have with the standard handlings where you wear it on the thumb. Again, just because they call it a thumb tip doesn't mean you have to wear it there. Of course, there are other places you wear it, but this is a PG-related tape, so we will not get into that. Thank you. People often ask me about Peak wallets. There are so many of them on the market now. My favorite Peak wallet that I use is the Mark Striving's SUC case, which unfortunately is not currently available, but Mark assures me they'll be available again in the near future. Many other modern Peak wallets do incorporate the SUC feature, though, and it's very valuable. As I explained in many of my lectures, the wallet is not on, this is an SUC case, and Mark gave me permission to discuss this with you because there are other wallets that have the function, but I always preferred the original. It's simply a business card case that if you were to have a billet or business card, whatever, in this case they're not folded up, if it goes inside the case, like so, in fact it's coming to the outside on this side because this part is open. This enables you to get your peak in very much the same way you get a peak with a Jack's wallet, which I'll get to in a minute because that's the granddaddy of all peak wallets. I have found, and as I've discussed though, that the SUC case is much more valuable as an adjunct to pocket writing. There are two sides to the case. I have a little piece of tape stuck here, which you might not be able to see on the camera. It doesn't matter. The only purpose for that tape is so I know which side is the side that has the slot that goes to the outside. See, this other side, nothing, doesn't go anywhere. It's a legitimate case. In fact, I have a billet in there. And I use this to carry. People say, well, where do you carry your billets when they're not in your pocket? In here. I just have a whole stack of them in here and I'll pull them out. So it's a natural thing for me to have. This is the case that I carry those cards in. Works just as well with business cards. Used as an adjunct for pocket writing, I'll very often write a prediction, apparently, fold it into quarters, place it into the legitimate pocket of the wallet, so it really goes in there. This side is the side where it would come out through the slot, okay? In my pocket is a stack of billets and either a short crayon or my, I call it the Dr. Crow writer. It's the one made from a banjo pick. You can buy, as explained, the construction details are explained, a lot of photographs and stuff in my book, The Resurrection of Dr. Crow, but I'll explain it to you again here. These are 5-string banjo picks. They're made of nickel. They're manufactured by Dunlop, D-U-N-L-O-P. You can buy 5 of them in a music store for less than $10. You want finger picks, not thumb picks. I see a lot of people refer to these as thumb pick writers. They're not. They're finger pick writers. A thumb pick looks entirely different. It comes off the side of you. It won't work. Okay? A finger pick, though, made of nickel, can fit on any finger. They're easily adjustable. You just squeeze them. The metal bends. You can wear it on your forefinger. For standard nail writing, you can wear it on your thumb for standard Swami writing, which is actually what it would be called. You're not nail writing because you're not using your nail. It makes a very broad number at a short distance can pass for Sharpie pen. I refill this with, I just buy these China markers. I get these at Office Max and at Staples. You can buy a dozen of these in a box for a couple bucks. You know the kind of pencil I'm talking about. You unwrap the paper as it runs down. They're used for writing on glass, on glossy surfaces. It's basically a crayon, but it's the right width. What I've done with the finger picks there is I got a tube of Gorilla Glue. Gorilla Glue works perfect for this. There's no soldering or anything else involved. And small eyelets that you can get at Joann's Fabric or at most larger hobby shops have eyelets in different sizes. You'll find that there are eyelets that easily accommodate regular pencil lead, And, you know, these are kind of eyelets that you squeeze into fabric, like to make a little button, make a little hole that is rounded like a grommet. But in this case, you're not squeezing them into position. You're just gluing it as a barrel to form a barrel on the outside, on the pad side of the finger pick. Now, it might be hard to see on the camera. You'll notice that there is a hole in a finger pick in the middle of the pick side. I've glued the eyelet directly over the hole. That way I can use a needle later, if necessary, to push the crayon out from the back. Now, originally when I made this, I thought, well, I could enlarge the hole in the pick and put the eyelet in from the back and glue it there. And then I decided, no, that's absolutely wrong because the pressure will be wrong. If later I'm writing with it, the pressure is going to be from the opposite side and it would come loose eventually. I didn't want that to happen, so I said, no, I'll glue it directly to the pad. And I found that Gorilla Glue is stronger than solder. So you can even break this off if you didn't want to, unless you really tried hard. It's then painted flesh color. Now, I don't really, as you can see, this one is starting to show glare all over. It doesn't matter to me because nobody sees it anyway. It's like a good handling of a thumb tip. It should never be in view. When you're wearing it on your hand, it's either here in a finger palm position, or it's easily loaded on the finger, or it's behind something. So for the only reason for the flesh-colored paint is for your own security in case you're afraid of flashing while you're gesturing around, but it's not really a big deal. But to get the right flesh-colored paint, and obviously we have mentalists of many colors around the world. And so here's your solution. Don't waste time going to a magic shop or whatever and ask for flesh-colored paint because it'll never match you anyway. Go back to the same hobby shop and get Tester's model airplane paint, and you want the matte colors, the kind they use on military models. Like if you're making a model of a plastic tank or an airplane, you can get the military style colors. They're matte finish, they're not glossy. That's what you want. Come in little bottles about this big, $1 or $2 a piece. You get one bottle of white, you get one bottle of brown, you get one bottle of red. You may want some yellow. Some people use that yellow. Again, it goes to the skin tone you're looking for. In the cap of one of the bottles, you put brown mostly, add a little bit of white, that brings it up to a tan, add a little bit of red, and you can experiment all you want because it's just small amounts. And you'll have perfectly matched flesh paint in no time for whatever skin tone you want. And then you have one of the most practical thumb writers there is. It's easy to get on, easy to read, and it is the most controllable of any that I've found. Thumb tip writers are not as controllable because you don't feel that connection with the paper. It's separated from your thumb. Undernail writers, I use those a lot, but a problem with an undernail writer is it can pop off, and you will tend to lose a lot of them. And the other major advantage of this type of writer is the price. They're extremely cheap. If you were to buy this writer, and Ed Carlisle, my good friend Ed Carlisle, I gave him permission to manufacture. This is the most widely ripped off thing that I ever put out. I first demonstrated this at a PEA convention a good 15, maybe 20 years ago. And everybody raved about it. They thought it was brilliant. In my first book, my second book actually, Artful Mentalism of Bob Kэssidi, the first one, it describes the finger pick writer. And the original one that I had then was made from a plastic finger pick. But it was the same idea, except you didn't use an eyelet. I used a hot nail, to burn a hole through from the back. It made a lip that would hold it. But it was the same thing. Later I discovered that actually it was more practical to use the nickel because the plastic ones were fine, but they didn't adjust, and so they were extremely tight. While they would fit on every finger, if you put one on your thumb, it tended to hurt a bit if you had a wide thumb. These are much more adjustable. I started putting these out, though. That's easy to make, and selling them for $35, $40. I've seen these sell for as high as $50. Now, who would, as one who uses a thumb writing device a lot, I would never spend that kind of money on them because you do lose them. They do break. It's not like when I was using undernails, I'd get Sam Dalal writers. Those are the ones that my good friend Richard Osterland uses. Those are very inexpensive. I like them. In fact, when I was using those, I'd buy them by the gross. You could buy a gross of them direct from Dalal. But the thing is, you got to take the paint off them so they don't slip off your finger and blah, blah, blah. And they don't give the bold writing that I can get with this. But back to where I started, it also works very well as a pocket writer. The problem a lot of people have with pocket writing, which is simply where you have this stack of billets in your pocket, either paper clipped onto a hard surface like a piece of silicate slate, like I've discussed in some of my lectures, also works as a nice, you just cut out from a DVD case a square that looks like a little piece of slate. Well, you can use them as slates, but you can also use it as a pocket writer, that you can clip a billet to that with just a paper clip and put it in your pocket. Now you have a surface that you can write on in your right trouser pocket. Of course, you don't want to do this if you're wearing jeans. It'll look like you're playing with yourself. If you're sitting down, you might find it much more convenient to have the pocket writing device in your side jacket pocket if you wear one. I've had a lot of new mentalists say, but all I wear is a jean and t-shirts. Well, if that's all you wear, then don't do this stuff. Sometimes we have to give up a little bit for our art, you know. I need the pockets, right? Using this, assume I have the pocket writer in my pocket. This is clipped to it. You'll recall that in the beginning, I did a prediction. Put it in. This is where I find this much more valuable than a peak wallet. This is a dummy. It doesn't matter what I wrote on it because it goes into the real side of the wallet, okay? Now I can do whatever I want. If I'm going to go to my pocket to do something, I'm going to do it while both hands go to the pocket to do something. In this case, writing on the paper, refolding it, and then just casually coming out with it later. So now I have whatever I want written here. And I should use one that has a prediction on it so you can see it. This is now in my hand. Later, and this has apparently been in plain view the whole time, in turning this over, rather than using the wallet to steal or peek from, you use it to load into. By grabbing this here, I can feed that billet into the slot. This also works with an index in your pocket. Say you have 5 or 6 billets or even a dozen billets indexed in your pockets. You finger palm the one you need, having put a dummy in the other side. And when you go to here, there it is. It's really just coming right from your other hand, but passing through the wallet. That, to me, is the most valuable use of the SUC case. I know Mark has written about it. I use it almost extensively for that type of work. If I want to do a straight peek, like I said, the SUC case works as a peek wallet, but it doesn't give you a full view of the billet. You see? So depending on where they wrote, you're only going to see part of it, okay? For that purpose, I always preferred the original Jack's wallet. And a lot of people have never seen an original Jack's wallet. Well, in fact, the one I'm going to show you is not an original one. It's the one that's available now. The original Jack's wallet was actually a bifold, very much like the SUC case, okay? But instead of having this opening that's concealed by the leather decoration, leather reinforcement on the wallet, it simply had a window, a big wide open window on one side. So a person would put a card in there, you'd close it, put it in your pocket, and as you put it in your pocket, you don't look. You know, there's a standard way of doing it. You go like that, so it's natural to open your pocket and look down, and that's when you get the peek. But when they started marketing Jack's wallets, and I think this was mainly to appeal to magicians who like moves and stuff like that, it was a little too bold. I mean, there's a window. You can't examine it, you know. There's a window on one side of the wallet. So they made it into a trifold. This is one that this is a JOL Jack's wallet that I got from my good friend again, Ed Carlisle, who sells them. I don't know if they're being made anymore, though, but there are Jack's wallets available. They are all based on this now. They're all trifold wallets. They're also perfect for holding billets. And like I said, the advantage of the Jacks over many other peak wallets is you see the full surface of the card. And here's how it works. The window's right here. I'll put the card into it so you can see the window. Okay? You can see the word right through the window, no problem. Okay. Person writes, they put it face down in front of them. When you take this out in the beginning to take the cards out, the window is on the inside right here. There are a lot of handlings for this. I have one that's kind of interesting. What I'm showing you now is standard stuff, not unique to me. It's just a lot of people don't know how to properly handle one of these things. When you're opening it, you flip toward yourself like this. That gives the illusion that They've seen, you know, you're not really trying to create illusion, but it's just a free handling, okay? It just looks innocent. They put their thing in here. They slide it in, or you help them slide it in. There are two ways you can go at this point. You can either flip it like this and flip it like this and go to your pocket like before, because that leaves it on the outside, and you can see it as you're aiming for your pocket. Or you can do it like this. This is where I use a rubber band a lot. I usually have a rubber band around a wallet. I'll put it around my wrist before I start with this. They slide it in. This time, instead of flipping this in and going like that, I'm going to lift this part up like this and flip this part like that. Okay? So from the front, it looks like I'm just closing the wallet, but I've just looked at it, but now it's shut on both sides. Follow again what I'm saying? This comes up. That screens what's happening. I click like that, see the word, drop that down, and in the same motion, snap the rubber band. Hand it to the person, tell him to put it in his pocket. That's the advantage of the rubber band. He can't open it to see what's going on. And that's the original Jack's wallet. Now, people get mad at me when they find out they send me a really expensive wallet. I haven't destroyed this one yet, but I will shortly. Most Jack's wallets come with a plastic window here. That's to ensure that the card doesn't fall out. I typically cut that out, or I'll cut a large oval in the middle of it. And the reason for that, so I have another brown Jack's wallet, one of the old ones now that I'm using regularly, but I wanted you to see what they look like new. The reason for cutting an oval there, well, it's an oval, so that means you can still stick cards in there and they're not going to get hung up. Whereas if it was a square window cut in there, the edges could get caught up. But it also lets you use the wallet to double as another pocket writing type of device. This can be in your right-hand pocket, and you can write on there, or better yet, you would have it like this in your pocket. So inside the pocket, when you're going in with the pocket writer, this would go. The writer would go right here. You'd be able to write on the card that's in there, and then later on come out, and obviously you're not using it as a peek in this case like you did before, but you're using it just to remove a prediction from that's been in there the whole time. I've had people say, Bob, that wallet cost $55 and you cut a hole in it? I say, yeah. I do that to a lot of my stuff. Anyway, that's two of my favorite wallets and the handlings that I use for them, and I hope you find that useful. Thank you. Okay, in my recent Penguin Live lecture, as well as on another download segment that we taped, I showed how you could use plastic slates made from DVD cases to produce spirit writing. And in that segment, I explained a very nice switch, the back and forth switch. Now, that is equally applicable to envelopes and banknote effects. And I thought I'd let you see it with envelopes so you can see the great value this has. Assume we have, say, 6 or 7 people on the stage, okay? You have a bunch of envelopes. They all have a piece of play money in them, except one that has the $100 bill. The standard banknote effect, as you know, everybody, they mix up the stack of envelopes. Everybody gets one. The performer gets whichever one is left. So if you got 7 volunteers, you have 8 envelopes. All right. This I like because it is so ballsy. There's really no method except the one move. All you need is one envelope. The envelope with the real money in it has to be marked so you can identify it. Now I'm going to give a very bold mark here so you can see it on camera. This is nothing like I'd use in real life. In real life, I would just maybe bend a corner so I could see it when I get to close range on the envelope. But for our purposes here, we're going to put a big black dot on that envelope. So you know that's the one that has the real money. Well, actually, it doesn't have anything in it right now, but we will pretend that it does. Here's the one with the play money, along with a bunch of others. The envelopes are all mixed, distributed. You get whatever one is left over. Now, 1 times out of 8, you're going to get the one that's marked, and you win already. In which case, you could let everybody else exchange envelopes with each other, or you could take it a step further. If they want, they could exchange with you. How was that? What if you don't get the right one? Well, they can still exchange with everybody. Anybody can pick whatever envelope they want. That's the impression you're giving, but here's what's really happening. Suppose the second guy in the line has the marked envelope. I know that. I've got one that's got play money in. I go up to each person. Now to everybody else, I'll do it fairly. To a person, say, first person in the row has play money, and I have play money, okay? I'll go up to them and say, well, do you want this envelope, the one you got originally, or would you like to trade for mine? You're doing a Monty Hall here. You can have this one, or you can have this one. Well, that's obviously a free choice. It doesn't matter which one they take, because you don't care. They're both play money. But when you get to the guy that's holding the money, you do apparently the same thing. You take his from him and say, do you want this one, or we're going to trade for mine? No matter what he says, now I'm doing the move, and I'll explain it to you again. I know I explained it with the slates. I'm giving him the same envelope back. It looks like I'm switching them, but I'm not. In other words, there is the money. He's got it. I got to get this envelope into his hand. So I said, well, do you want to keep this one, or would you like this one? No, he wants his original one. Or in that case, you're giving him the money. You want to do it the other way around, obviously. You want this one, or would you like to trade for mine? You want mine? In other words, you can give anybody whichever one you want because you're really not switching them at all. I hope that's clear. It's a really nice hustle that you can do. The person who's got the money, you take it, you say, you could either keep your envelope or you could switch it. You do it fair the first time. So you got this one in your hand because now it doesn't matter. No matter what they want to do, they're going to get the one that doesn't have the money. Do you want this one or do you want this one? Well, they said, you want that one? Okay, good. The key is, though, and I eliminated saying that the first run through, is to get the one with the mark into your right hand first. So you go up to the guy, you take his hand, you either want this one and legitimately offer him the other one, or this one. That puts this one here. So now, depending on his choice, now you do the move. So you're always going to end up with the marked envelope. It's a very good utilitarian move that I think you can create some really nice banknight style routines with it. I hope you like that. Play with it. It's one of the few moves in mentalism that is actually fun to do. You'll stand in front of the mirror going, that looks good. Enjoy yourself. Thank you. Okay, this is a special bonus effect for you for this download. Comes straight from my act. It's one I rarely do, rarely lecture. And keep it to yourself. It's a card effect, but it's meant for large audiences. I'll have to describe it to you first before I show you how it works so you can appreciate what's actually happening. Assume I have an audience of 100 people, 200 people. I'm in a ballroom setting or I'm on a stage. I say, I'm going to work with two halves of the audience, the half to my left and the half to my right. The premise of the test is this. I'm going to make a prediction on my large pad of something that's about to happen. But I'm going to show that prediction to half the room, not show it to the other half of the room. So I take a pad and I write, say, 10 of hearts on it. I turn it so this side, I actually will tell the audience, okay, you people all turn around over there. Look the other way. And I'll kind of wait to show it to this side of the room, and I'll kind of walk back so they can all see it, all right? As I come back to the front, I let one of the people on that side of the room who knows what the prediction is, I'll have them hold the pad face down on their lap. So they will maintain control of the prediction throughout the entire effect. Okay, half the room knows that I predicted 10 of hearts. The other half of the room doesn't. I now take out a pack of cards. They're in new deck order. I go up to somebody in the front row, and I have them verify that all the cards are in fact there. I point out there's your spades, there's your diamonds, there's your clubs, there's your hearts. All in sequence so they can see quickly that all the cards are in fact there. Now it proceeds like this. This is really very nice. Other guys have come up with similar variations since I came out with this, but I kind of like this one a lot. You'll see why. What I'll do is I'll take the spades and diamonds and hold them in this hand. I explain to the audience, and the clubs and hearts in this hand. I now look at the side of the room that doesn't know what the prediction is and say to someone in the front, it's the lady in the front row in the blue dress, yes, I'd like you to point to either one of my hands. Now we're going to do this procedure exactly the same way each time. We're going to go through a series of choices. I'm looking to the lady over there. Point to either one of my hands. Say she points over here, okay, to this hand. I say, fine. That is eliminated. As we go through this, every time you point to a hand, that gets eliminated. It will always be the case. At this point, I mix these up. Now, I'm not going to go through this whole thing at this point because otherwise we'd have to reset for the explanation. So I will let you imagine that I've now shuffled these, okay? Imagine these are now shuffled. And I can show them after they're shuffled that they are, in fact, all shuffled. I will go to this side of the room, who knows what the prediction is, and say, and I'd like you folks to note that the card I predicted, and I'm showing some people near the front, is still there. You see, and they see the 10 of hearts there. Even though the pack is mixed, you just spread until they can see that the 10 of hearts is still there. Say, good. Now I'll take, let's see, about half in each hand. And again, keep in mind these are mixed. I'm not actually separating them red and black, but I'm keeping them separate right now so we don't have to reset later. But these are thoroughly mixed. They point to either hand. Whichever one they point to is eliminated, just like before. It's no equivoque here. You really are eliminating whichever one they point to. That gets eliminated. You take what's left, you go over here and you show them that the 10 of hearts is still there. This will be clearer when I get to the explanation, how you go about doing this. You divide these in half. It's the same thing. They eliminate. Whatever hand they point to, you eliminate. You continue with this until you have 5 cards left, about 5 cards, right, in the last hand. At that point, you let somebody from this side of the room touch any one of those 5. Now, intermittently, every time after there's an elimination, you show this side of the room, as I said before, that the 10 of hearts is still there. So they're actually going along in the effect with you. For some reason, no matter where the person points, the 10 of hearts is still in the other pile. Okay, at the end, they're down to 5 cards. Now you'll understand why I didn't mix these up now, because we didn't want to reset the whole thing. Okay. These are, as you might have guessed, not exactly an innocent pack of playing cards. These are the so-called protean cards. Now, there are different companies that make these. These were the ones made in South Africa. I just put them in a CVS drugstore card box. I took the Joker from the protean deck, that's what it's called when it was marketed, and stuck that to the back of the CVS card case. I like doing little subtle things like that sometimes. You know, I'm surprised I don't have a $2 price sticker on there. I'm big on putting phony price stickers, dollar store emblems and things on my props, so everybody thinks that the expensive prop I've got is just a piece of garbage I picked up at the, the dollar store or whatever. So CVS, it's very disarming. But these are actually very special cards. These are the ultra thin cards. There's actually 2 full decks of cards, but it's only the thickness of 1. I'm probably familiar with these. I believe Card Sharp in Germany also makes a similar pack. These are extremely thin. I imagine they'd be very useful, too, for people that do split fans and card productions, magicians, because you could actually back palm double the amount. But here's the setup of the effect and how it works. 10 of hearts is there for a reason. I got a set. The way you get the right cards to do this is there is a card trick called Fill, a card named Fill. You have to buy what's called a Fill refill kit. Okay? What you'll get in the Fill refill kit is the regular pack of 52 cards. But in addition, you will get 26 force cards. In this case, it's the 10 of hearts. All right. I took the clubs, and these cards are regular. The spades and the diamonds are regular cards. No preparation is done there. The clubs, you notice this is actually noticeably thicker than this side, but you're keeping that concealed with your hand because there's supposedly half the deck here and half the deck here. The clubs are all roughed on the back. I spray them. I use Tester's Dull Coat, again from the hobby shop. It's the best roughing spray you can get. There are other types. The thing is, you want a dull coat lacquer. It's basically all it is lacquer. And the Tester's is used for model airplanes, again, to take the gloss off. It also makes cards cling together very well. You can buy Tester's dull coat lacquer in a magic shop with a roughing spray label on it and pay 3 times as much. But don't. It's about $3 in the hobby shop. you rough the backs of all the clubs and all the hearts. That's what I've done. Because you see, each one is actually a double card. Behind the ace is roughed to 10. Behind the 2 is roughed to 10. Behind the 3, well, behind every single card, if I go through lightly here, is a 10 of hearts. And that's true for just the clubs and the hearts. Okay? So I think that should be clear to you. So now, this is why I didn't mix them before, but now I'll do the mixing because it doesn't matter if we destroy the order. In the beginning, after I've shown the cards, show them to somebody near the front, and they can verify because the cards are in sequence. The reason I have them in sequence is so they can verify quickly that the cards are all there. That's a subtle point, but it's very strong. They can see all the cards going by. They see all the hearts, they see all the clubs, they see all the spades, they see all the diamonds. Now you spread. So you have the diamonds and the spades in this hand. This is the only time you don't mix, and these over here. All of these have 10s of hearts roughed to the back of them. These are straight. You've made your prediction. The person in the audience is holding it on their lap. Half the audience knows what it is. I point to the lady sitting over here. Point to either hand. Now, I don't say anything about eliminating until she points to a hand. If she points to the hand with the regular cards, I say, good, those are eliminated, and that's how this is going to be throughout. Whichever hand you point to is always going to be eliminated. We will not deviate from that. That is, assuming she pointed to this hand to begin with. Obviously, she pointed at this hand to begin with. Well, this is the half I want. I would say, this one, good. This is the one we'll use. As we keep going throughout this, you're going to make similar choices. Whichever one you point to is the one you want, and we will discard the other one. In other words, after that initial choice, you're going to be consistent throughout, all the way till the end. Okay. So you're left with this pile. Okay, these, good. We'll keep these. Now you show them to the one side of the audience who knows what the cards are, and you'll note that my prediction is still there. And of course, they're going to see a 10 of hearts. You haven't mixed them yet. Now I kind of mix them around. Really, I'm just shuffling them. I don't want to separate the pairs. I'm just kind of, just jogging them around a little bit like this. So they're kind of mixed, but not really mixed too thoroughly. You don't want to riffle shuffle them. You could screw up your rough and smooth pairs. But apparently they're all mixed. Now you just go half and half. And just like before, point to either half. Now in this case, they're keeping whatever, which one they point to. This one, good. Put these down on your table. Go to this side of the room and spread them and say, is it still there? Now what you do, as you spread, you're either going to see a 10 of hearts that was already there because there is a legitimate 10 of hearts in the deck. And if you don't, and in this case we do, it's right there, okay? They will see that it's still there. Now we do the same thing. Mix them around again. Spread into 2 piles. Point to one. This is the one you want to keep. Yes, good. These get put aside. Again, you go to this side of the room and spread them. And see what I did here on turn. See, as I go, I could show the 10 right in the beginning if I want, just by spreading just one on that. They'll see that it's still there. This is why you can keep showing to the one side. Now we're down to, okay, we're down to we're down to 5 cards already. So we would actually stop at this point once I show it's still there, right? These now get mixed. And again, you're doing them, they're coming off in pairs as you're doing this. You're just going top, bottom, top, bottom. So there's a rough on each one. Now it's a simple matter. I'm going to move these cards one at a time from top to bottom of the pile. Pointing to somebody on this side of the room. And we'll do it very slowly and carefully so you can see everything is fair. Whenever you want me to stop, say stop. She says stop. Do you want this one or the one that I just dealt to the bottom? Which you want this one. That's when you just peel off the one, which is of course a 10 of hearts. Hand it to her. The whole procedure looks incredibly fair. Now the person who's holding the prediction, and this whole side of the room, see, this side of the room knows what the prediction is, but they don't know which one she just picked. She turns over the pad on her lap, it says 10 of hearts, and we show everybody the card you selected. And sure enough, it's a 10 of hearts. This gets a very powerful response because it just looks so fair. Another reason I like this effect a lot is I talk a lot in my writings about major effects and minor effects. Major effects are effects that involve the entire audience. This one does. Half of the audience is in on it, half of the audience isn't in on it, And that's what makes it so strong. You kind of have them in opposition to each other. There's a lot you can get into presentationally with it to make it interesting, but I think you'll enjoy that. Try to get hold of the cards, put it together. It'll be well worth your time. Thank you very much. I'm Bob Kэssidi. Good thoughts to all of you.